Hello, my name is Karina Barrera, and I'm one of the HR directors for Midland Independent School District. And I want to welcome all the new teachers and towards your orientation today. And so my portion of this session will cover T-TESS, which is our appraisal system for assessments and instruction and lesson planning and so forth. And so I wanted to go over, give you an overview of T-TESS. So the first thing that I want to go over is the resources that we have available on our website. So if I can direct you to the Midland Independent School District website and go to our HR website under careers. Here on the left-hand side, you'll notice we have our T-TESS information tab. We have our MISD appraisal manual for 2021. We have our T-TESS teacher manual that comes directly from Teach for Texas. And then we also have a direct link to the T-TESS rubric, which is used to assess the formal observation. Okay, so we're going to click on the appraisal manual for 2021. Okay, and what we want to start off by just pointing out that every aspect of our appraisal system is governed by the rules of the commissioner. And so you can find all of the commissioner rules on chapter 150 right here on this link. Once you click on it, it gives you all of the provisions under the appraisal system, the domains 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the process that governs each one of the portions of T-TESS. It outlines all of the requirements for conferences and provisions for each one of the sections, okay? We're going to discuss each one of these in detail through our MISD appraisal manual, okay? Once you click on our appraisal manual, again, that link is on page 2 here of the appraisal manual. The other resource that we have available is teachfortexas.org, and that one is also an in-depth outline and gives you all the resources for the appraisal system that's provided by the Texas Education Agency. As we scroll down through our appraisal manual, each one of the sections is outlined in the table of contents. Okay. And so I'm going to skip down to page 8. Okay, so this graphic organizer will display all the portions, all the sections of T-TESS. Okay, so under the T-TESS appraisal system, and I just want to remind you that this is the tool that we use to support teachers in all aspects of instruction, classroom environment, and the growth of it. So it has different components to help you grow instructionally as a teacher so that you can become the best teacher that you possibly can and maximize our student learning as well, okay? So the first portion of it is the teacher orientation or update. So your principal or assistant principal, your administrator, is required to provide a teacher orientation training that goes in depth into each one of the domains and each section of T-TESS. If you're a returning teacher and you can provide evidence that you've already have the T-TESS orientation or you've gone through the T-TESS appraisal system, then they can do a refresher. Okay. After they provide the orientation, then the next steps would be for you to complete a self-assessment, and in that self-assessment, you're evaluating yourself and provide also looking into the student learning objectives so that you can set those goals not only for yourself but for your students as well. And then you develop a goal-setting professional development plan. Okay, and that is going to be entered into a program called Eduphoria. Okay, and your goals will be approved by your administrator, but your appraiser, the one that's going to be conducting your observation and appraising you for the year. Okay, the next step is to develop that plan and continue growth and plan your professional development for the whole year. Okay, and monitor and track it as well in Eduphoria. The next step would be the other component of the T-TESS appraisal is to have your formal observation. Now, when you're planning for your observation, you do have to plan for a pre-conference with your administrator. And then at this time in the pre-conference is where you discuss some of the areas of refinement. What are we going to be looking for in the classroom? Um, what is your purpose? How are you going to differentiate and provide instruction for your students? This is a planning session with your appraisal so that they can go into your classroom and do a formal observation and have prior knowledge of your classroom. Okay, then they conduct the formal observation, that is a 45-minute observation in the classroom. And then after the observation, then you have a post-conference where you come back together and discuss your observation. What are some strengths? What are some weaknesses that we're seeing? Some areas of refinement and some areas of reinforcement for you to work through. Then the last portion of the T-TESS process is to have a end of year conference. Okay, in the end of year conference, here is where you are collecting all your data throughout the year that you have worked on from your professional development growth plan, and you discuss it and bring it together with your appraisal for the end of year conference. And at the same time, at the very end, you'll have a written summative of the observation, the collection of data presented for the entire year. Okay. So here is the timeline for the T-TESS appraisal process. Like we said, we start with the teacher orientation, and that is going to start as quickly as possible. And it is to be conducted no later than the first 3 weeks of school, or at least 2 weeks prior to your first observation. So we are encouraging all principals, administrators, assistant principals to begin their orientation here in the next week or so. Okay, and again, they're going to provide that orientation training for you at the campus level. The goal setting professional development plan, this is going to be needs to be submitted within the first 6 weeks from the date of the orientation. Okay, and these timelines are on the next page for you. And a goal setting conference is required for a teacher in their first year of the appraisal under T-TESS. So if this is your first year, all new teachers will need to have this GSPD, what we call GSPD, the Goal Setting Professional Development Plan Conference with your administrator. And again, that is required in order for you to set up your goal setting professional plan. Okay. Now these goals right here under your GSPD, like I said, will be entered into Eduphoria, and your administrator appraising you will need to go in there and approve your goals within the first 6 weeks, okay, of completing the orientation. Okay, then within the first 6 weeks and the end of year conferences, you are developing your growth plan. You're providing ongoing review of your student data and your teacher data. You're also conducting and gathering documentation towards your goals, okay, so that you can provide documentation for student performance. Okay, and also, like I said, you are collecting evidence to support Domain 4. And then the end of year conference timeline, your end of the year conference must be conducted prior to 15 days prior to the last day of school. Okay, and then here at the end of year conference, you will set your new goals for the following year. Okay. And again, we want to emphasize that this T-TESS observation process is so that the appraisers can continue, give you continuous feedback and provide continuous support as you develop your teacher practices in the classroom. The next page gives you the timeline that the administrators will need to follow when conducting your T-TESS. Let's see if I can turn it one more time. There we go. Okay, so this, as you can see, gives you the windows for the timeline for each one of these. Okay, and this is the same thing that we have discussed with just very specific due dates for the administrators. Okay. So I want to go back to another link. Here's our manual on our website for administrators. Just one more page here under resources. Again, we have the Texas Education Agency, our Texas Appraisal Code, Chapter 150, and there's the direct link that outlines every portion of T-TESS. It is very specific regarding the rules and regulations under each section of the appraisal process. It takes me back. Okay, so if I go back just one more page, back to our Human Resources tab, I just want to point out just one more link here for you, and that is the teacher manual for T-TESS. Okay. So the teacher handbook is the one that gives you an overview, an in-depth overview of each component of T-TESS. Again, our T-TESS is the appraisal system that we use to evaluate teachers so that we can provide that support instructionally in the classroom. Okay, it starts off with our teacher standards, and these are all the standards. I believe there's 6 standards of practices and responsibilities for each teacher. Okay, our 4 domains under T-TESS. Domain 1 encompasses planning. Okay, how are you going to plan for your lessons? How do you set up your standards and alignments that are aligned to the TEKS, essential knowledge of skills? And then instruction, domain 2 focuses on instruction so that you can provide that differentiation. And how do you communicate with your students? How do you provide those lessons so that the students gain that understanding and knowledge of instruction? And then domain 3 focuses on the learning environment. How do you set up your classroom policies and procedures? How do you manage student behavior to maximize student learning? How do you set up your culture for your classroom? And then domain 4, the last domain under T-TESS, is the professional practices and responsibilities. And again, this is where you provide evidence throughout the year on your professional development. How are you growing as a professional and setting those goals, and how are you going to attain those goals? Okay, so those are the 4 domains under T-TESS. And then for your observation, and I want to go back and point out one more link for you. Under the T-TESS information, we have the T-TESS rubric, okay, so that you can go into the rubric and be this is very specific on how you're going to be appraised, okay? If I can zoom in. So again, the domain 1 is planning. Okay, and it goes through and it gives you very specific ratings for each one. Under improvement needed, you can see the areas that the teachers would fall under this area if they needed improvement. Developing guides the instruction and the lessons with minimal or provides appropriate lessons and so forth, and then proficient. And we have accomplished ratings and then distinguished ratings. Okay. And so forth. So each one of these domains is going to give you the dimensions, the dimension, and the standards of alignment and so forth. Okay. So each one of these, you need to go through and familiarize yourself with the domains under T-TESS so that you get a grasp and an understanding of the appraisal system and how you're going to be appraised and how to develop as a teacher. And so those are the 3 sections that I wanted to go over and give you an overview of the T-TESS appraisal system. And like I said, your principals are going to go into the training with you in depth so that they can provide that orientation for you within the next week or so. Okay, so thank you. And if you have any questions, please reach out to our office regarding our timelines, policies, and procedures for T-TESS. Thank you.